Welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Furstenberg. I'm Director of Industrial Security with Waterfall Security Solutions. And I'm here to talk today about common firewall mistakes and how these mistakes can lead to compromise. I'm going to be talking specifically about firewalls that are set up to protect IACS, Industrial Automation Control Systems, also known as SCADA, also known as ICS, process control networks, and so on. Goes distributed control systems, energy management, it goes on, the list goes on. There's two reasons why I'm going to be focused on that. The first is that's been my background for the past 20 years. That's all I've been working on, and also that's the company that I work for the past 5 years now. I work for Waterfall Security Solutions, which has been around almost 15 years, and we're focused on cybersecurity for integrated IT/OT networking. This is what we do. We're a technology vendor, and we're here to work with whoever is needing to get information out of their control system into the hands of whoever on the corporate networks or the cloud, but they don't want to expose their control system to the risks associated with the viruses, the ransomware, the hackers, all the bad things that happen on the internet and get into corporate networks. So we have to switch focus. If we are traditional IT security, we have to think about the challenge differently, because cybersecurity in a control system such as a refinery, such as CPI, chemical processing industries, these are different than what we're used to. In IT security, we think about protecting the data. And in industrial cybersecurity, we think about protecting the process from the data. Where at the goals of IT security, we hear all the time, are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And the goals in industrial cybersecurity are different. The goals are safety. The goals are reliability and equipment protection. What does reliability mean? It means continuous, correct, efficient communications and operations. But of course, it's not just about safety and reliability. Of course, there is a financial impact. We know this risk does not exist if there is no impact. That's part of the equation to determine how much risk we have. And cyber attacks that happened in OT networks, in control systems, they have extreme financial impacts, as you can see here on the right. I think we all know that those numbers are on the low end of the actual impact, and they include only the direct damages, not the indirect or the reputational damage. So with that in mind, I want to remind everybody that firewalls are hard. I've spent a lot of time with firewalls. Most of the plants that I was responsible for, we had firewalls protecting them. It is extremely easy to make mistakes with firewalls. And those mistakes can lead to challenges in terms of the cybersecurity of the plant and the operation that they are there to protect. So when I'm talking about the firewall challenges, I want you to think about the fact that there is actually an alternative. I am not here just to tell you that this is a mistake that people make with firewalls and this is how it leads to attack. I also want you to think about this is a unidirectional security gateway. This is a modern alternative, protecting process control modern alternative to legacy infrastructure like firewalls. So what is unidirectional security gateway? It is hardware. It is hardware that allows communication in only one direction. Information can only be sent from the transmit to the receive because the transmit hardware has only a laser in it, no optical receiver, and the receive hardware has only a photocell. It does not have any light source. So it is truly one way, hardware enforced. Now our software does the hard work of making sure everything works in order to replicate servers and emulate devices across the one-way hardware, typically from an OT network to an IT network. This eliminates all of the mistakes we're about to examine with firewalls because no attack, no cyber attack, no matter how sophisticated, nation state all the way down to script kiddie, it cannot get through. There is no physical network path to get through this. So let's start. Out of the box, we know firewalls generally come with a access list in place. And typically, it's going to be an access list that is any to any. What does that mean? Well, it's a rule set. That's what an access list is. And an individual access list element says this can happen or this cannot happen, depending on if it is permit or deny. So when we take the firewall out of the box, just about every consumer grade firewall says permit this everything. Why does it permit everything? Well, because the company, if it says block everything by default, you connect your firewall that you just bought and nothing works. All communication stops. What do? You pick up the phone and call them. They don't want to have to take your call, so they say permit any. Industrial grade firewalls, they can be permits, they can be denies. Some are explicit, it is written, you can see it. Some are implicit, it is not written, it is implied, and all of them are different. And once again, with a unidirectional security gateway, this is irrelevant because there is nothing coming in. There is no network path for any of those attacks, any of those ransomware, those hackers to get into our protected network. The rule set order is important for firewalls. The rules go in order. It is a big if-then-else statement. So first match wins. First rule that is matched wins. So rules that are entered in the wrong order could yield unexpected, maybe even undesirable firewall behaviors. And it also affects performance, but more importantly, think about if we want to block IP address 10.20.30.40, but above that, we have permitted IP address range of 10.20.30.0 /24, 255.255.255.0. Well, that rule hits the match, and the block that we're trying to block, .40, that host, it never happens because we permitted the entire subnet, the entire Class C subnet before we ever got to the block. We have to take care with our rule set. And this sounds simple, and it is when I talk about 2 rules, but once you get to a couple thousand rules in your rule set, things get challenging. This is why things like unidirectional security gateways, which do not use rule sets, but rather rely on the hardware for security, well, it eliminates the potential risk associated with rule sets in improper order. There's a big one that most firewalls come with many types of administration. You can use web browser, could be HTTP, HTTPS. You could use command line, either SSH or Telnet. You could use serial cable. Some even have their own graphical user interface, and each of these is individual. And if we do not disable them, they remain enabled, and that increases the attack surface of the firewall. Additionally, each of these interfaces, each of these administrative options could have its own password. Those passwords are default out of the box and often published on the vendor website or support websites. Everybody in the world knows what those passwords are. We have to disable anything we are not using and change passwords for those that we are using. Now, of course, with the unidirectional security gateway, it cannot be remotely misconfigured or maliciously reconfigured to permit inbound attacks because the hardware does not allow inbound. It is one way only. Those default passwords, we just talked about it. Everybody in the world has them. They're not news to anybody. Some people think that because they have set up an external authentication server such as Active Directory, Radius, or some other role-based access control, mandatory access control, discretionary access control, it does not matter because there are always local administrative passwords on the firewall just in case network communications to the Active Directory or authentication database is lost. You have to be able to log into the firewall locally. So those local passwords remain. They have to be changed. Or you could use unidirectional security gateway because they're the errors and omissions that people always make. They might affect functionality, but will never affect security. How about patching? Security updates. We know operating systems for our computers need to be updated. What about our firewalls? Of course, some of them even run the same operating systems that our computers do. Many run some proprietary software, but they all have firmware, they all have operating system, and all of that is written by humans. Humans make mistakes. Some of those mistakes will be security holes, so we have bugs that are needing to be patched because those bugs, those security holes, are published on the firewall vendor website for everybody to see, and anybody can use free tools like passive OS fingerprinting to determine what kind of firewall we are running. And if we don't patch the firewall, well, it's easy to use widely available exploits for old vulnerabilities in our firewall to attack. Once again, the unidirectional security gateway eliminates this vulnerability because the operating system patch level is for functionality, not for security. Firewalls, and I can tell you this from experience, we often have to install much more than just the firewall. We think that the firewall costs only a couple $1,000 or euro, or we look at it and it's cheap. We can do this quickly, except that the firewall always requires compensating controls. What are compensating controls? Could be intrusion detection, could be SIEM, could be log management infrastructure. You're going to need a complete network redesign, possibly readdressing of IP addresses. Things are going to get expensive when you have to add more switches and more routers to the system and authentication systems, because we know that the firewall's local administration is easy to break. How about unidirectional gateways? It really is the capital purchase of the unidirectional gateway you put in. And most of the time after installation, which only takes a couple of hours, sometimes for very complicated, it's a day or two, but after that is done, most users don't even realize they're going to a replica of the database, of the historian. They don't need to know. They get all of their data in real time from the replica, and the production server stays protected on the OT network, safe from attack, safe from ransomware, safe from hackers, safe from any viruses. I mentioned earlier that firewall rule sets can get large. Out of the box, just the rule set is over 50,000 characters long, if you look at the text. And it only gets more complex from there. And we all know complexity is the enemy of security. I said that 12 years ago. I stand by it today. We have to, with our firewalls, not only patch them, we have to evaluate the rule set constantly because, let's face it, we put in temporary rules. Short-term needs, I need this done now, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and we never forget, we forget to go back and take it out once the work gets done. Over time, there is too many holes in the firewall. It becomes a router. It just permits all communications. And this is what we need the unidirectional gateway for, to enforce one-way server replication. Much better because the bidirectional communication is not possible. This is most important. I remember taking hacker techniques and incident handling 15 years ago, and the instructor tells us in the class that outbound access equals inbound command and control. TCP is a bidirectional communication protocol. Anytime, once that communication is established, the SYN, the SYNAC, the ACK, that is two-way communication. Request, response. So anything that is permitted to connect outbound, a return path is created back in. So even though we might hear somebody tell us, oh, my firewall is configured for outbound communication only, if it's TCP IP, it's two-way. There has to be a response, there has to be an acknowledgement, and any data that comes back in is a potential attack. It could be the expected response, it could also be the latest ransomware that is built to attack our systems. So I hope that some of this has been helpful to you and has made you consider what you have to do with your firewall if you intend to keep it and how much work that will be. I want to remind everybody there is an alternative that is much easier, much more secure, helps you reduce costs in the long term. It gives you 100% visibility with 100% security. Nothing online attacks can come in across the one-way hardware. So thank you for listening. We are the OT Security Company. We are here to establish IT-OT integration while permitting secure, reliable operations, preventing these remote cyber attacks on our critical environments. We need to protect not only the data, but we need to protect the systems and the process itself. If you'd like to hear more information about industrial cybersecurity, I'd encourage everybody to go check out the Industrial Security Podcast. This is not about Waterfall. This is just folks talking about industrial cybersecurity. Waterfall sponsors it, so you see our logo, but we never talk about Waterfall on this podcast. It is intended for information. It is intended for people to learn. We hope that you get education from this and remember where you learned it. So I want to thank everybody, and if we have time, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Dear guest, maybe you have a questions.
Okay. I do not see any questions here in the question panel.
Yes, no more questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your presentation, for your time.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.